this is my review of Death Note. Okay, so in this episode, now that Light has regained his memories, he begins to execute on the rest of his plan to eliminate everyone who's still in his way. So what he does is, first and foremost, after Misa parts ways with him, he orders her to start killing again and go and basically just create the idea that there's another Kira on the loose, and which will get the task force investigating that. And she goes and does that. And also, throughout this episode, we actually get to see bits and pieces of L's life, and his time in the Whammy House. And while we're not explicitly shown anything like substantial, what we're shown shows that the Whammy House was not really a fun place. So, yeah. And also throughout this episode, L is openly aware of the fact that he's going to die very soon, knowing full well that since he's still under the suspicion that Light is cured, even though Light has been quote unquote cleared. So basically Light has basically engineered this plan where L is finally going to die, and L knows this. He's very much aware that he's going to die very soon. And throughout this episode, he's just in a state of melancholy because he knows he's going to die. But as Misa is conducting her killings, which are serenaded by Misa herself, it's just a montage of all her kills, and her using that, and her just singing in the background, which is really, really eerie. L meanwhile is having a bit of a conversation with Rem, pointing out that there's a piece of the Death Note missing. And which she points out that she wouldn't know anything about that, and she's never known anybody who would use the Death Note in that way, which is obviously a lie. And he also asks her if gods of death do indeed love apples, and she points out not necessarily, considering the fact that according to her, Shinigami evolved to the point where they no longer have organs. So yeah, and I'm not entirely sure if that second one's a lie, but considering that they're physically shown to be able to eat apples, but it's possible that they don't actually gain sustenance from apples. That's a very real possibility, considering that he brought back an apple from the Shinigami, that Ryuk brought back an apple from the Shinigami realm, which notably tasted like sand. So it's clearly they don't eat for sustenance. They just eat it because it tastes good. But in case, as Elle is having this conversation with Rem, he notices that they actually have another alert on the computer about another Kira. And Misa, and it's immediately recognized by Rem to be Misa, so she knows that that's most likely Misa doing these killings. And as they contemplate how they're going to tackle this new Kira and the possibility that another notebook might exist in the world, Light actually brings up a very important question: what do they plan to do with the user of the Death Note once they catch them? So because the only person they've caught is Higuchi, who is now dead. So obviously they don't have a plan. And the task force members immediately begin thinking about execution, which immediately scares Rem, because she knows that Misa is most likely the new Kira, that she's very likely going to die if they catch her, and realizes and wonders why Light would even bring that up, until it finally clicks and Rem realizes Light's entire plan. Light engineered a situation where Rem would have to sacrifice her life to save Misa, and because of that, she's most likely going to have to kill everybody else in his way in order to save Misa, which Light planned on the entire time. So he basically engineered a situation where Rem would have to basically commit suicide to save Misa. So and sure enough, because nobody knows that Shinigami can actually die if that happens, nobody's going to suspect a thing when it actually happens. But in any case, after that, Light goes on a walk through the headquarters and finds L standing in the pouring rain on the roof. And though L initially points out that he can't actually hear him, Light eventually comes out onto the pouring rain himself and asks L why he's out there all by himself. And Elle points out that he hears bells, and it's supposed to be a metaphorical thing, and Light admittedly points out that he doesn't get it. And Elle points out that he shouldn't take what he says seriously and just dismiss it. And Light openly agrees, saying that he can't afford to take him seriously all the time, because there's sometimes some very weird stuff that comes out of his mouth. And sure enough, Elle confirms that he feels the same about Light, and asks Light if there was ever an instance where he actually told a lie, or if there was ever an instance where he actually told the truth. And Light points out that for his entire life he's governed himself under the idea that while humans are imperfect and do lie from time to time, he's made a very conscious effort not to lie to anybody in a way that could physically hurt them, which is in itself a lie. So because we know that Light is Kira and he's planning to kill, and he's basically lying to Elle's face right now. He's been lying this entire time, so obviously that's a lie. But in any case with that, Light encourages Elle to come back inside, and they two dry each other off. At which point they go back to the investigation room, where it's revealed that Watri has actually set it up so that Elle can conduct an execution using the Death Note to investigate the 13-day rule and see if it's actually legit. So basically, what they're planning to do is they're planning to give the Death Note to a death row inmate who is going to die in a little over 13 days, and they're going to have him write his name in the death. Going to have him write a name in the Death Note of another criminal who's also going to die. So basically the idea is if the guy doesn't die in 13 days, he'll be pardoned from his execution. So, and sure enough, as Elle begins to have the preparation set up, Rem then decides to make her move, and Watri dies. He keels over his keyboard, and as he slowly dies, he hits the dead man switch on his keyboard, which Elle points out was put in place just in case something happened to Watri, and he was ordered to push it if anything happened. And because he hit the dead man switch, all the data on the case has been deleted, so they're back at square one. And Elle immediately suspects that it's Rem's doing, and immediately asks where Rem went. But before he can actually give the order to go investigate, he gets his name written in the Death Note and begins to die as well. And sure enough, because Rem wrote his name down, and because Elle posed a threat to Misa's life, Rem dies in the process after killing both Watri and Elle. And as Elle lays dying, Light cuddles Elle's dying body, and without saying anything, just smiles to Elle at the fact that Elle is dying, without anybody else being able to see him except for Elle. And Elle gives a knowing glance to Light, realizing that he was indeed right about Light being Kira the entire time, and that before passing away. So yeah, in one fell swoop, Light has managed to just eliminate everybody else who was a threat to him. He eliminated Rem, who threatened to kill him if he even bothered to threaten Misa. So now now he no longer has her hovering around. He killed Watri, who was Elle's right-hand man for most of the investigation, and would likely have taken over should Elle die. And then there was indeed Elle himself, who has been Light's major threat throughout most of the anime up to this point. So with that, he's killed them all in one fell swoop. They're all dead. And Light, immediately after relishing in the fact that he has now eliminated all threats in his way, he begins to fake the fact that he's mourning Elle's death, and begins to go look for Rem, even though he knows full well that Rem is dead. And sure enough, he eventually finds the sand that used to be her body lying on the floor with her Death Note sticking out of it, and he slips the Death Note in the back of his pants before calling the task force's attention to it, and bringing them all in to see it. And while they don't understand, and while nobody understands what exactly is going on, Light is determined to not only take over in Elle's place and finally solve the investigation and finally solve the Kira case, which again is a blatant lie, But he plans to do so as L would have done if he were still alive. And people also begin to remark that he starts to sound a little bit like L when he says this. But in any case, Light goes back to the command center, and as he's going back to the command center, he gloats to himself in his mind, pointing out that he has finally eliminated everybody in his way, and he's now the god of the new world. So, yeah, where to start with this? First and foremost, Light basically eliminated everybody in his way using Misa. He had Misa pose as a new threat that the task force needed to take down, which put Rem into a situation where she would have to kill both Watri and L, and because Rem did that, she died as well. So now Light has no threats in his way and is able to kill indiscriminately without any sort of obstacles to stop him. And because now he is now head of the investigation, he now is in the position where he can mislead the investigation away from him, so he can officially kill as many people as he wants without ever being investigated for it. So, yeah, he basically won. That's basically the long and short of it. He won in the span of an episode. Once he regained his memories, he was able to just go from point A to point B in his plan without any hesitation and just win. Because there was no longer any suspicion toward him. He was able to outsmart L and win, and he was able to do so while also eliminating every other threat in his way and not casting suspicion on himself, which is nuts. He actually finally won against L, and now it's going to be interesting because now there's no longer the Light L dynamic of the two intellectual titans facing off against one another. So it's just a matter of Light doing the best he can to cover up his own murders from the rest of the task force, while just continuing to pretend to investigate the actual murders of Kira. So, yeah, that's my review of Death Note. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check this out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!